Welcome back to the Crazy Courage podcast, where we have guests of all sorts, all walks of life, all entrepreneurs, business owners, professionals. And again, today is no exception. We have Arshad Hisham, who is here. Now, to introduce Arshad Hisham, I can't even memorize this. I'm going to tell you, he is a serial entrepreneur. He's an executive leader, a CEO, board member, advisor, educator, managing consultant, investor, engineer, and inventor with degrees in business, engineering, and MBA. There's no way I was going to be able to memorize that, Arshad. It sounds like you do it all. What kind of projects are you up to these days? What kind of things do you do?
Thank you, Nick, being on the show, and thanks for the introduction. And those titles were not intentional. Those happened over 20 years. It is all an interconnected story. So happy to go into that on a podcast. So I think my primary role is at inGen, where I'm the founder, CEO, and chairman of the board. So we are into AI, automation, robotics. This is a company I started in 2015. In fact, this is my fifth company. I had a corporate career for 8 years, did an MBA, and did 5 companies with varying degrees of success. I negotiated an exit with a large automobile group on my fourth company, a $1 billion automobile group. And then I seed funded my fifth company shortly after that. So I also sit on the board of a couple of fast-growing startups in education, robotics, cybersecurity. I advise them on, how to move their business forward, how to get maximum out of the business. I'm passionate about a lot of things, so that's something I get involved only in things that I'm very passionate about. So this is either full in or no participation. Right? This is the way I usually operate. So and I'm also an inventor. I've invested in startups. We have an education stream that we're doing, including an engineering degree and junk works of schools. In fact, through one of the companies that I'm involved, they are in 600 plus schools. So we're giving our robotics kits in all the schools. And so that's in a nutshell all that I'm involved in. And education is especially closer to heart because nothing gives me the same level of satisfaction as education. So it's pretty exciting to be involved in some of this initiative, right? And all said and done, none of this would be possible without the great team that I have around me. So it's not a one-man show.
Okay.
It's teamwork, a lot of brilliant people around me.
Wow, fantastic. I mean, it sounds, based on looking at your history and all the titles that you have, that you passion for sure, but a thirst for knowledge. It seems to me, based on the research I've done and reading about you, that you're always trying to learn something. It never ends. Like, you have this unquenchable thirst for knowledge. And based on all those titles, like you said, it didn't happen overnight. It happened over 20 years, and just seems like you're always learning about the next thing, looking at a new challenge. And is that how you're built?
Absolutely. And that's a nice way of putting it. And I think on some levels, you could even call me obsessive about learning, right? To use the right phrase. So, and that also includes processes in my business, how we do a lot of things. As you know, with a lot of the recent developments and products coming out from the AIT, right? We have changes in sales, operation, and I'm changing it all around. So I think, and I love, experimenting with new things. I love change, especially make things faster, efficient. And that's one of my superpowers as an entrepreneur, right? And I think with most entrepreneurs, you adapt to, and you are very receptive to change compared to a big company who are like very less receptive.
Yep. Yeah, you have to be, for sure.
And I think a key ingredient of that is the passion for learning, the willingness to unlearn and learn as new things come. This is the key. And it's hardwired into my DNA.
It seems that way. It seems like you're always moving forward. And I love that term, unlearn and learn, because so many times it's just easy to get comfortable and you know how to do something and you're like, okay, I'm comfortable. I know how to do this. So it's easy not to keep learning. And I think pardon me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like you're saying to unlearn in terms of just you need to not necessarily get stuck in your ways, but be open to some new ways and new information and new ways of doing things. And is that what you're saying? Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I think there are two more statistics that I would put out there just to just for the audience to understand how I operate. One is that 80% of the time I'm outside my comfort zone. Pretty large, right?
Well, that's a lot of time.
Yeah, that's a pretty large number. So every quarter, I don't know, I've not done 80% of the things that is on my plate. A pretty large number. And more than 60% of my initiatives fail.
Okay.
So there is a lot of experimentation, iteration, failure, or a lot of movement, and but it just moves forward, right? A lot of people come and ask me, man, how do you manage your time? How do you
Right.
do all, right?
Yeah.
And my answer is brutally delegate, treat, train fast, come back, have a pretty thick skin, pretty
Yeah.
thick
Thick
skin,
skin. Yeah.
very low on ego, don't have an ego at all, and understand that 80% of the time you're outside a comfort zone. So you're struggling with yourself, self-doubt, which is all fine because nobody has done that yet. You have not done that yet, right? And
Right.
it's a fantastic feeling once you get uh, used to this, right? It's really good. It's really good because you really have time for all the important things, and you can stop worrying about trivial things like ego, pride. These are like trivial things. That's
Those
not
are
gonna.
traps. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Absolutely. But let me ask this: saying that 60% of the time you're failing, or 60% of the things that you try fail, and that's a big number. But if I assume that you're mitigating those losses, like those failures aren't big setbacks.
sure,
And
absolutely.
I assume based on your level of success that the wins far exceed any failures that you're having, right? So 6% of the things you try are failures, but if those failures are just minimal and you know when to cut your losses and move on, then, as soon as you have a success, you're going to the moon sort of thing.
So there is one more dimension to this, right? So you should think a bit multi-dimensional, multi-linear. I'll tell you what. So if there is sale, I'm not failing in sales.
Okay.
I'm going to have at least 10 different things I'll try at the same time in sales.
Okay.
From that, 6 are going to fail at the first stage. And I'm going to take them off and
Right.
try the 4 and scale it up to the next phase. Then the next
Right.
4, I'm going to split into 10 more on the next phase. And from that, so this way I'm refining and failing, but there's a micro failure, right? So the gamut of activities is where a lot of people think very linear. They have a business plan and that meets the real world. And you know what happens, when the rubber meets the road, right?
Yeah, you're just
So
following that one line.
yeah, so I think so you need to understand my failure is defined slightly different. So there are so many threads and I keep on refining it, but I'm still failing. So mentally, if you're any normal person, it's like getting rejected in sales. If so many things fail, you need to be composed enough to understand that this is probably the right way to do, because otherwise it's going to affect you mentally or confidence, right? So
Right.
this is a conscious strategy. So I just want to make sure that you understand that failure is not failing at that
No,
initiative.
exactly. Yeah, it's one of those things. You put all your eggs in one basket. If you're just following that one trajectory, that failure will definitely be a setback. And then you have to completely change course, figure out a new way of doing things. But if you have, like you said, if you've set up a bunch of different paths, like say 10 different avenues of trying to tackle a problem, and 6 of them aren't working, you learn pretty quickly to get rid of those and move on, put your efforts into the 4. And then out of those 4, figure out 10 new ones. I love that. That's a great way of doing it. And like you said, you're unlearning, right? Because you're getting rid of all the stuff that's not working, and you're focusing on new stuff, and you're learning new stuff. Though you're not just, okay, well, we're just going to stick with these 4. You're refining it as you go, so it's always getting better. I mean, that is got to be a great recipe for success.
Sure. And it's not usually taught. The problem is when I did an MBA in business schools, they teach from textbooks,
Yeah.
standard waterfall business plan. These are things that you learn in the trenches, right? These are war stories, battle stories, right? These are
Yeah.
stuff that you learn in execution. So it's not taught a lot, this approach. But if you speak to a lot of entrepreneurs, especially serial entrepreneurs, they would have some similar mechanism to pursue.
Tell me what your favorite part is. Is your favorite part like learning something new, tackling a new challenge? Like you say, serial entrepreneur. Like obviously, you're always starting something new. Is it like, do you get bored of things? Like you've learned everything that you need to know, and you're like, okay, look, I need to move on to the next thing.
Yeah, kind of. So there are two parts, right? I see some of my activities are me collecting resources for me to have an end goal. See, you need to understand what I love most is that I'm a creator, okay? At a
Yeah.
very high level, I'm a creator. I like creating things, making things to, bringing things to life that has an impact. And that's my ultimate thing. It is not wealth or money, but these are all resources, right? Your time, a subject, effort, these are all resources. And when I'm
Right.
able to create and bring things to life and create an impact, that's fantastic. And just to give you a bit more backstory, I'm a big science fiction fan. I read
Right.
Asimov's Foundation series when I was 11 years old. I was pretty young to read such a thick book.
Yeah. Sure.
And I was fascinated by the intersection of ethics, AI, future, time, and that kind of drove me. So I've been driven from that young age, kind of be involved in bringing some of it to life, right?
Okay.
So this is what I've been doing in my real life. So my goal is that whatever time I have, I want to kind of go back and bring out all these blueprints of all the stuff I read and create all those things. And that's what I'm doing here, right? So this way it is a much more broader life plan for me compared to make $1 million or buy a car. See, I don't own a I'm
Okay.
very light on assets. I don't like owning material things, right? For me, like I create stuff. So I think so that's kind of where my core drive is coming in from. So once you understand that all these are tools, so I have this backstory behind when I have the tools and that's how I end up with my profile. So it's not in reverse. I'm not doing this to create a profile, right?
Okay.
So this is how you should look at it.
Right. There's no ego. But I do love the fact that you got into science fiction early and you're using that because science fiction is great. Like that's just people's imaginations run wild about the future, technology, all that stuff. It's a great place to get inspiration. You're drawing on other people's imagination. Like, well, that's a great idea. How do we bring that to life? Or I look forward to seeing that in the future. I mean, I know that not everyone's into science fiction, but I can see how as an inventor, creator, and engineer, you would be drawn to that because you're always playing around with ideas and then now you're playing in someone else's world and someone else's mind and drawing from that for inspiration.
Fantastic. So yeah, so that's a bit of a backstory. So I want to give you some context on, the way things are developing, why you
Yeah.
created the companies you created, and why I'm not stopping. You asked the question, will you ever get bored? So I think I have an unlimited resource full of things I want to create. So
Nice.
it's unlikely that I'll get bored. I may need more resources, right? That's
Right.
the potential.
There's only so many hours in the day, right? That's
Absolutely.
probably your biggest limitation, I would think. All right, Arshad. So how far back do we have to go to, like you said, you're reading science fiction at 12 years old. You had a thirst for knowledge back then. Like have you always been this thirsty for knowledge as far back as you can remember?
Yeah, I think I've been fascinated by books at a very young age. I was a voracious reader. I read through our local public library over a year because it is so much to read and consume and understand. And books are great. I think for centuries people used it to travel and understand culture, ideas. And those were kind of uh, my early formative years were like reading a lot of books.
Okay.
So books were like played a very, very important part. And I think there is a different component. I don't know about others, but for me, Reading a book, you visualize things in your book with your imagination, right?
Yep.
It's not like watching a movie, which is more constrained. So
Yep.
this is a bit more, you can imagine things in your head, and that helps you with the world building and product building, that whole exercise. If you read a lot of books, you kind of start building castles and products and stories and universes and start imagining how this will work. And I think it's a great exercise. And I think one of the reasons I feel more people should read books, it'll influence the way they think in certain manner compared to watching a documentary or
Sure.
something like that. So yeah, so I've been a reader and voracious reader, and even now I read at least couple of books even within my schedule. I read a couple of books on Kindle every week, right? So I skim through, and there are tools like Blinkist which help you with summaries and other things.
So what kind of books do you read? Like these days, you said you're reading 2-3 books a week. What kind of books?
I've read a lot of Stoic books recently, Marcus
Okay.
Aurelius, and and very fascinated by a lot of the thought process around the Stoic life, and I was very fascinated by that. So I was reading a lot of that, and
Okay.
again, it is surprising how much level of wisdom exists there. So many years, right? All the inward-looking questions, and the self-improvement books existed like 4,000 years. It is not. It's not something that came in. So this is my discovery that I realized, all the self-improvement books, productivity hacks, existed 4,000 years back. It's written on a papyrus from Nero, Marcus Aurelius, and there are a lot of people who wrote. So that is something fascinating I found out recently. So then I started reading a lot about old books in Cicero, and all that, especially the Greco-Roman Stoic philosophers. Yeah, it kind
Okay.
of had a lot of wisdom to share.
Okay. So you've done a lot of education. Now, to me, you seem like the kind of guy, it's just based on my interpretation of what you're saying. You seem like the kind of guy who'd get bored in a classroom. In terms of you're thirsty for knowledge, you want to take the courses, you want to take the classes, but I feel like just sitting there listening to someone lecture, I feel like you'd feel limited in that space. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think so. This is a great point. Like I'll tell you, one of the things I'm doing is that I've launched an engineering degree, and the
Right.
engineering degree is going live in a couple of engineering colleges. And it's not just a subject; the methodology of teaching has been changed dramatically, right? So what I've done is, and this goes back to my personal experience, because when I was doing my undergrad, you won't believe this, I never attended classes because it was so boring. I think you guessed right. I hated class because but the funny thing is that I used to top university exams, but the internal session I would just pass. And I think
Okay.
it was efficient. So in my mind, I found it very inefficient going in and doing it, and I think it was a very, very inefficient. And this is a broken system all over the world. This is followed. That's one of the reasons that I've launched this new methodology of engineering where you don't need to attend classes. You attend classes for the Q&A, but then you can read up on YouTube and TEDx talks and learn. So
Sure.
that's how the new generation is learning. And this is kind of very important, right? So you're bang on. And in fact, I was learning computers, robotics, doing art when the class was going on. And because I
Right.
was involved in a lot of activities, I used to get extra leave. So I just passed through and I never attended classes. And
I could see it. And especially the world we live in now, right? All the information is at your fingertips. I think that's where we should be headed to is self-directed learning can go a
absolutely,
long way.
absolutely.
But have a space for, like you said, Q&A, like having questions, like being able to better understand concepts that you need help with. Absolutely. And talk things out and share ideas. Sure. But to have someone really read out of a textbook for you, it seems way too limiting.
It's still, unfortunately, it's still the way it is delivered all over the world, even now,
Right?
unfortunately. So, and I think even doing work projects, all that has to change. And also, I think people learn in different manners. Some learn by
Yeah.
observing, some learn by reading, some learn by doing. So you need a system that encourages every type of learner. You shouldn't penalize.
Right.
And that's also something I've done in this. So we have projects We have modules so they can choose how they want to develop. So we're not going to penalize or judge based on the learning style. So there is
Okay.
room for all kind of learners, right? The thing about it is common sense. You would wonder, why is nobody doing this, right? So this is common sense. Why is nobody doing this? And
Right.
surprisingly, not a lot of places are doing this. So this is where I've launched this initiative. And again, close to my heart because I struggled with this in my engineering degree. And I wanted to get change. So this is one of the reasons that I did.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, I guess it goes back to what you're saying. We need to unlearn and learn, get a new system into place. You're so right. Like the education systems around the world are just so rigid and just so based on everyone sitting in a classroom, learning from a textbook, listening to teachers drone on and on about whatever during a lecture. And there's really little room for individual styles of learning. Like you said, everyone learns in a different manner. And we really should be accommodating those kind of things. But I mean, I don't know how feasible it is, of course, because our education
You can
system.
walk out, but what tends to happen is that rather than accommodating, right now we end up penalizing different
Okay.
forms of learning, right? So this
Yeah,
is even
yeah,
worse. You're not even accommodating. We penalize. You can't
yeah,
submit a written assessment, you fail. So, right?
yeah,
It should be,
exactly.
right? So
All the things the same, standardized testing, it's great, but it doesn't really um, take into account everything that people can learn or have learned. And I saw a cartoon a while ago. It was a whole bunch of animals lined up, and I will say like a lion was grading them on how well they could all climb a tree. Well, you got this fish in a
yeah,
fishbowl. He can't
that's
climb the tree,
I
right?
know that cartoon. Yeah,
You
that's
know
a
that cartoon,
fantastic cartoon. Yeah,
right?
I think that's something everybody should see to
Yeah,
understand. I remember that cartoon. There's a monkey, lion, it's like climbing trees, and the
right.
fish can't climb the
Tree.
trees. So
Fish
yeah,
can't
so
climb the
that's
tree, right?
yeah. So it's fantastic. Yeah, that's a great cartoon.
Yeah, it's a simple, but it really illustrates the point that it's easy for physical differences, obviously, but it just shows that everyone thinks different. And like you, for instance, you have a thirst for knowledge. Like you went to your library, you were doing all this stuff. It's great. So not everyone's going to learn that way. So how do we accommodate for everyone else? And I'll tell you myself, I hated sitting in school and just listening to teachers drone on and on. I would just be staring at the clock. And I'm sure most of the students in those classes these days are as well. It's not fun. People, I mean, I don't know if you're going to be able to get everyone to be passionate about learning. I don't know how realistic that is. But if you can find a way to reach, the students, the people that are learning on their terms, you can definitely engage them and they will learn more than just learning the bare minimum to pass a standardized test to get a grade on their report card or whatever they're being graded on and get the diploma or whatever, but then go out in the real world, not know anything, not understand how to learn. If you can't learn on your own in the real world and learn how to pick up skills, you're going to fall behind everyone else.
Absolutely, I fully agree on this. So this is interesting topic since you bring it up.
Yeah,
This is
it's
one of the
interesting topic,
reasons. Yeah, one of the reasons that I'm passionate about education, why I call myself an educator. And
yeah.
it's not just imparting knowledge, it's also the methodology that I'm trying to change, right? That's what I'm trying to say.
So how do you like to teach? So like there's no way you're sitting in front of a classroom just droning on about stuff. So you're an educator yourself. How do you like to teach, to impart knowledge?
Yeah, so I think it's multi-dimensional, right? So I'm acutely aware of the different learning styles. So I don't expect, see, I read a lot of books,
Yeah,
but I don't expect the people listening or participating in my courses or curriculum to always read. They may like watching stuff. So I think you
yeah,
need a bunch of different things. You need videos, exercises, mini projects, book, PPTs, Q&A session, and some recorded lecture deliveries for people who want to see. So don't forget that there are still some people who learn they're also there, right?
yeah,
It's not that everybody hates. There are some people who learn best when you speak to them and, you dictate and, you speak.
yeah.
So for them, also, if you have these 7 modes and you have a consolidated folder or program, then they can go in and choose what they want, mix and match, and come back and participate. And it's fascinating. And there's also one more interesting aspect. So one thing that we are also doing is that give an option to people pay their learn, right? They
Right.
can have the same topic again a couple of months. If somebody is learning very fast, they can learn 4 topics in 2 months. But somebody is not interested. So there are optionals of 70 credits which can move in and they can pay. But this is also given. What I found, Nick, this is interesting. Around 40% of the people coming in courses doesn't like options. They need structure. They need to be told the structure. They're not comfortable with options,
True.
right? You think it's great. You think it's great. You give people option, they're gonna love it. But 40% don't like it. They need
Interesting.
option. They need structure. So I think you're not always giving options and making it customizable is not always great. So you need to cater to that population also, right? So
It's
fundamental.
interesting you're talking about pace. You're right. I think, yeah, learning styles is one thing, but pace is also very important. And I don't know that that's talked about as well. Certain students would, like yourself, would just be flying through all the curriculum, whereas you have other people that just need to absorb it and take their time. Like I have a really good friend, as an example, who he'll tell you, he said anytime he takes a course or reads a book, he needs to go through it 4 times to absorb the knowledge. But he knows this about himself. When he reads things, he has to do a first pass, take some notes, he has to do a second pass, and he has a whole system. But he's developed his learning style. And I'll tell you, this guy's one of the smartest guys I know. He's brilliant, but this is his learning style when it comes to reading. Like he really has to take his time. And he'll tell you, he's like, well, I could read that book, but I've only read it once, so I don't know nearly all of it yet. So I have to read it again and again. And it's just funny to hear him speak that way, that he's so self-aware that he knows that that's how he learns. But like I said, he's got it down to a science, and he's brilliant. The guy, he could talk circles around anyone. And once he absorbs that information, it's locked in there.
Yeah, and that's where there's some of this counseling. If you take a step backwards, the role that educational institutions should play a big role is as counselors.
Yes.
Other imparting knowledge, counsel on the methods, counsel them, give direction. And that
Right,
should
give
be like
direction.
30%, right? Yeah, 30% of the, rather than, imparting the rote learning or hammering ideas,
Right.
which I think is brought up. So the
Yeah.
counseling of giving direction and, learning style is what education institutions should do, right? So fascinating topic.
Fascinating topic. Yeah, for sure. You never know where we're going to end up. All right, Arshad, let me ask you this. Do you have a favorite project that you've worked on and you look back and you think, man, this was the most fun I've had, or this was really rewarding?
Yeah, I think it would be the origami AI platform that you're building, right?
Yeah.
Which is kind of the super platform that drives everything. Think of like the central brain, which powers all the products and drives everything, all robots. So this is what you're building, and it's kind of very fascinating building it out and doing that. So there are two things that one is technical, the other one is not technical. I'll kind of mention that, which is also interesting, right? So this is the most thing I liked about the origami platform is that it's like a brain and it keeps on developing, getting better. And in the future, we can create other products like humanoids and rover with it. So this is origami platform. That was really cool. Conceptualize, visualize, and kind of get this out, right? The
Yeah.
other thing I really like is I have an individual project, or I would say rather a pastime. I call it the 2010.
Okay.
Why I call it the 2010 weekly is that I have a goal of meeting 10 new people every week on
Okay.
an impromptu meeting without expecting anything in return. And that's good at building a network.
Yeah.
And 20 people from my previous network who haven't spoken in the last 6 months. For 1 year, I reconnect. So this keeps my network active, and you won't believe this is driven. A lot of momentum across all my initiatives is driven by this 2010. And this is going into a networking meeting without expecting anything in return. I allot this time every week from my schedule for this. And this has been fantastic. I've met all kind of people, such a broad network, and I also make sure that I'm well connected with my previous network, right? So
Yeah.
that has been super fun. And I love when all is said and done, I love meeting people. I like to be interacting with different people. I love communicating, meeting new guys, different culture, you know. So I love the whole process. So I think this also keeps me happy because I'm guaranteed to meet 30 people a week, and this I try to do it in person, if not a virtual one, pandemic does. So this is great. And I would advise this to every entrepreneur because what this also does, it increases your chances of serendipity, right?
Yeah.
So
Right.
you kind of, you're prepared. So it's like somebody else who said, you don't get lucky. You're fully prepared for the opportunities you're coming the way, right?
Right.
So it's wrong to say you get lucky. So this increases the chances that your ideas will get traction.
Yes.
So rather than just sitting and thinking and writing, you speak to a lot of people, share stuff, and we guarantee whatever you do, if you have this process, follow this for 4 months, I'm guaranteeing you this is a method you can use to, build out an idea or a product or whatever. This is fantastic. So
Yeah, I would think that's great advice. That's a really good way to build out your network for sure. Now, so where are you meeting all these people?
I do a lot of travel. So I do travel around the world. I traveled between India, US, Boston, Santa Clara, in the US mostly. Then I'm in London. So I spent some time in the Middle East. So
Wow.
whenever I go, even within India, I go to different cities. I meet a lot of people from morning till evening. Then I have come back and have virtual calls through Zoom in the night. So I meet people in the US. So I have a pretty hectic schedule. And I also I have like two parts to my day. I have a busy part, which is well prepared and structured. And I have an idle, lazy part, which is 6 hours where I have nothing.
Okay.
Because I like that space because that space gives me the mental freedom to think without worrying about it. So I close out every distraction for 6 hours.
Okay.
And I have nothing on my calendar. I don't check my mail. I just think, take out my notepad
Really?
or whatever, just
Wow.
think. And my other 6 hours is extremely well planned. So I operate in two modes, right? So
Okay.
this is how I operate. So I fit in my 2010 into the other 6 hours and spread it all the week. And, and I think this is highly recommended because most of the things that happen to me in my 5 companies is serendipity, right? So you just kind of meeting random incidents that kind of boost stuff. So you need to kind of increase the chance of doing that. So that's entrepreneurship.
Yeah. Wow. I love that. You're building momentum and you just keep it going. You're right. You do increase the chances of serendipity or something clicking together. You said it best. Prepared for the opportunities. Someone outside looking in might be like, "Oh, he's so lucky. He did this and that." But if you have a very structured way of setting up your week and outlining what you need to do in the day, between setting out your 6 hours of productive time and your 6 hours of just time to yourself in your head, you're preparing for opportunities. You're always working on new things, new ideas, and then when you meet the right people, it clicks. It's not just luck. It's like you said, you're preparing for. I really like that. I bears repeating for sure. And yeah, that was gonna be one of the questions. You're well traveled, right? I mean, did you start traveling at an early age?
No, I think I started traveling a lot when I started my career with IBM, and
Okay.
I joined a spin-off. I was a consultant, so I had crazy amount of travel. I
Okay.
remember there was 1 year I had a whole year of winter because I was in Cyprus, where it was winter in December. Then I was in Australia. In Australia, the winter happens in the other time frame, right? I was in
Opposite.
Australia, I had
Right.
winter again. Then I went to London for another project. It was again winter, right? So, and it's just so much travel and it's just going in, accommodating new cultures. And I love the process. I love the process of navigating the culture nuances and I've been pretty successful at it. So a lot of travel. I've been to Cuba. I've lived in Cyprus. Lived in Singapore, lived in London, lived in
Wow.
US, lived in the Middle East. So lived in
Wow. You've
Australia.
lived in a lot of places. Wow.
Yeah, it's not just
Yeah.
travel. I've lived in all these places. I lived in Australia for a year. I was in Canberra. I feel it makes me much more humbler and wiser. Because when you're well traveled, it
Yeah, for
humbles
sure.
you because you take a lot of things that you're doing as the right way to do things and you have the right approach and you're not. You realize that this is all a step, right? So living in all these places, much more than traveling, it's taught me a lot. I think because there's a difference. When you travel, you're a short-term visitor. You don't really understand the pain points. But you live there, that you understand the pain points. It's very
Yes. Yeah. Yeah,
right.
right. Once you're not just on the resort at the hotel or whatever, where you're seeing the best, and they're just you're getting all this great hospitality because you're a guest. But when you live there, you're no longer a guest. You got to take care of
Yeah.
yourself.
So yeah, and I picked up a bit of a Greek. So I was in Cyprus. I speak a bit of Greek. I lived in Israel. I had a project in Israel. So I lived in Dubai. I lived in London. I lived in a village in London for my MBA, then in the central city. I spent a lot of time in Florida. It's in Fort Lauderdale. So that was my first experience in the US, 2003, 4, and hurricanes. I was in South Bend, Indiana, where it was minus 25 in the winter. I lived
Cool.
there. So I look back fondly, and I think travel and living in different cultures, what I would recommend. Different cities, even within the US, a lot of different cities. If you can travel and live, I think it makes you very adaptable.
Well, no kidding. Yeah, especially you're telling me you're not just traveling different cultures and living in different cities and towns with different rules, but you're also experiencing a lot of different weather as well. Some warm, some definitely more extreme cold. You don't mess around. You really like to be well rounded, but like not miss anything. That's incredible. I guess it's all part of absorbing and learning, and you unlearn how to live in the heat because you're going to learn how to live in the cold, right? It's or opposite. You can look back and see that you've done so much and been to so many places. Any plans to live anywhere in the future that you can think of? You're like, I need to live on this continent.
Not really. I think I've
No.
become agnostic to places. The key thing I've realized now is that own as little. I mean, again, this is stoic, right?
Right.
Part of it is. So I was thinking, own very little assets. Don't get attached to all
Really?
material things, and just have the space. Because it gives frees up a lot of your mental bandwidth to do the really exciting thing. Because the greatest asset you have in your head, your brain. So you need to keep that very healthy, and give room for it to do creative things that will accelerate, that will find you. So don't, and not necessarily fret about the everyday things like what's a fancy car, most expensive car. These
Right.
are like wrong things to put in your head. My goal is that I'm agnostic to the place wherever I am. I think I will
Okay.
do just fine. But I just need my routine. I need access, but I'm agnostic. So it really doesn't matter.
It makes sense. It's a great way to look at it. I'd say most people are stuck in their comfort zone 80% of the time, and you're outside your comfort zone 80% of the time. So I'd say you're definitely bucking the trend for sure. And it only makes sense that you're okay moving around, living in different places, because you don't need to be comfortable. You don't want to be tied down by material things. You don't own a car, right? Why would you? Then now you're stuck having a car. You can't take that from place to place very easily. There's all the maintenance and repairs, and if you're putting gas or you're charging it up or whatever that car is, all of a sudden, like you said, that's renting space in your head that could be better
So
served solving the
yeah,
world's
so
problems, we'll say.
yeah, so the more materials you own and you are super attached, is going to have a daily maintenance cost in your head,
That's right. You're right.
right? And so you really need to think. I mean, you should be very close with the family, with kids, friends. Those are fine.
Sure.
And so people you can get attached with people. So I read this somewhere. Use things and love people, not vice versa.
That sounds pretty simple, but makes a lot of sense. Absolutely. Everyone should be considering that. Yeah. I don't need a super yacht myself or anything fancy like that. That's just a whole extra set of headaches for sure. Arshad, I've really enjoyed our time here. I've enjoyed our talk, and thank you for taking the time to sit down and really just explain to me how a person that has accomplished so much functions. It's just your thirst for knowledge. It sounds like is what drives most of your decisions, and really you moving from thing to thing, place to place, and just keeps your mind so active. Which I can't imagine, in your later years, you're gonna have any kind of decline because your mind is just so active. The rest of us need to be just a
Yeah, I can't promise how my health will go, but my mind will never retire. This I'm certain. So I think it'll be running till the last day. But I think health is what it is. So I think again,
Yeah.
those are things beyond your control. So nothing else you can do.
Fantastic. Arshad, thank you so much. I appreciate your time. I'll let you go. I'm I'm taking time out of your obviously busy life and day. Thanks so much. Thanks for being on my podcast. And I
Okay.
wish you all the best.
Thanks for inviting me, and I hope it is
Of course.
useful. And for all the people listening, if there
Yeah.
is some positive impact is coming out of it, I think it's fantastic. And I usually try to respond to most emails and messages. So if anybody reaches out, I'm happy to respond and help in any little way I can. Right. And thank you, Nick. Thank you very much.
And then I'll put your information in the description so people can reach out if they have questions, or maybe they'll be the people that you meet that week, the new people. Growing your network.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Arshad.
Nick.
You take
Thank you.
care.